Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
And let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains.
Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. Now, on the MTC call sheet today, I've got some fears for the NFL season in 2025. And I'm going to list them out for you, and I really hope they don't come true, but something tells me some of them might. And then Chain Gang Chatter, we're going to college football, man. So college football season is in full swing now, especially today starting week one of Saturday slate games. So I can't wait to answer those questions. And in my nonsense narrative, everybody's telling me that the Bears have to make the playoffs in 2025. And I just don't think that has to happen to signify progress in Chicago. And last but not least, man, everything benefits Texas when it comes to the Longhorns, Steve Sarkisian. I'm just being honest. All that and more here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with the opening toss. So, again, I'm a man who I don't like to be ruled by fear. I try my best not to, try to walk in confidence and all that stuff in my life. But there are some certain things that really kind of put me on edge when it comes to the NFL and some of these teams, because I know that it may be something people don't see coming, and it may be something that teams think they should do to better themselves, and I'm just hoping it gets these things. So I've got a graphic that's going to talk about in 2025 in NFL. Let's get in earnest. The first fear I have is that the Lions mirror their 2022 season when they went 9-8. All right, my second biggest fear in the NFL this season is that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to try to justify taking Travis Hunter and where they took him and what they gave up to take him. I'm definitely going to get into that. And lastly, the Falcons trading Kirk Cousins is a fear that I have in 2022. And I know as much as you've heard me talk about Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, you may be wondering why this is a fear, because I was never a Kirk Cousins fan to begin with, but I'm going to explain to you why. But let's start with the Detroit Lions. Now, why is mirroring the 2022 season, in my estimation, a bad thing? Or why am I fearful of it? Well, because honestly, 9-8 in 2025 isn't the same 9-8 in 2022 for the Detroit Lions. It's just not. Because in 2022, that 9-8 signified change. That 9-8 signified a new regime. That 9-8 signified a team that doesn't quit because they started the season 1-6 and then won 8 of their last 10 games. They also kept Green Bay, one of their most hated rivals, out of the playoffs and went 9-8 in 2022. It was also after a season when they only won 3 games. So that's why 9-8 in 2025 doesn't mirror 9-8 in 2022, because expectations are completely different in Detroit. But I'm a little bit scared because I told you, I like Detroit. I like what Dan Campbell has done. But one of my bold predictions was that Detroit wouldn't make the playoffs in 2025. And I know it sounds crazy, but listen to me. Everybody's documented and noted the change in coordinators. I've always said they've had 3 head coaches in my estimation with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, and now they have Dan Campbell left. So Dan Campbell has to be more hands-on, not saying that he has been as a head coach, but from a different perspective. And this is a team that is built on culture and camaraderie, and 2/3 of that from the top, to me, is missing. I just don't think you can overlook that. Secondly, can we just assume that with all of the injuries they sustained last year, that everybody coming back, Aiden Hutchinson at the forefront of this, is just going to be completely healthy and give you the production that he was giving you before he left via injury? You just can't guarantee it. And lastly, Dan Campbell is the new Ron Rivera. And what I mean by that is everybody used to call Ron Rivera the riverboat gambler. Remember when he was the head coach of Washington and Carolina? Because Ron Rivera would always go for it. Now, a lot of people love Dan Campbell because he does it, and I think there's a time and place to be aggressive. But I also think that being aggressive sometimes turns into being irresponsible. And I think you've seen that in playoffs of the past and in games of the past when it comes to the Lions. And what if this is the season where the aggressiveness backfires on Detroit, where they're one of the worst teams on 4th down? Because I know that's their identity. This is also, in my estimation, the new San Francisco 49ers, because they have a culture of physical play, and they practice that way. And what derails San Francisco over the past 5 or 6 years has been the injury bug. You saw it happen to Detroit last year. Because of the way they play, I'm not ever going to hope on an injury, and I'm not ever going to predict injuries. I'm just simply saying it catches up with you because they're a physical team, and you can't be physical on Sunday if you're not physical throughout the week. So that's my first fear. My second fear is the Jacksonville Jaguars trying to justify Travis Hunter. We all know what they gave up to get Travis Hunter at number 2, man. Like, we all understand that they gave up their first-round pick, right? They also gave up a second-round pick, fourth-round pick, first-round pick next year. The list goes on and on. But what you have to do if you're Jacksonville is don't try to make sure the pick looks good. Make sure that you're putting Travis Hunter in position to make an impact because that's what this team needs. This team simply needs impact players, and that's why you went up to get him. So if I say justifying it looks like he played 100 snaps in the game, if that's the case in one game, then that's the case. Regardless of what people think, and I know people say, well, there's no way he's going to be able to play wide receiver full-time and DB full-time. To me, that's irrelevant. You went and got a ball player who can impact the game on offense and defense or one or the other. It doesn't matter when it happens. Travis Hunter may find himself in the return game as well. I don't know. What I'm telling you is if you're Jacksonville, you just want an impact. And that impact may come from the intangibles, man. That impact may come from being a leader in the locker room. That impact may come from showing people how to be a professional as a rookie. You don't know what it looks like because when you draft somebody that high, you shouldn't just draft them for their talent. You should draft them for their mental capabilities and capacity. You should draft them for their character as well. And that's something that has never been in question with Travis Hunter. So stop trying to justify and make sure you're not trying to justify the pick. Just allow the pick to be the impact that it needs to be on your program. All right. And lastly, the Atlanta Falcons trading Kirk Cousins. Why is this a fear of mine? Because I'm a firm believer that the Atlanta Falcons have a plan. And I think they plan on making sure that they're situated in the present and in the future, specifically at the quarterback spot. The money is not an issue right now because they're not having to pay Michael Penix Jr. So if you were to trade Kirk Cousins, to me now you're giving up one of the biggest assets in the NFL, not because it's Kirk Cousins, but because it's a viable backup. Because how many people in the NFL, organizations, how many teams can clearly say with confidence that they have viable backups? If your starting quarterback goes down, it's a wrap. The Atlanta Falcons have that. Now, I don't think Kirk Cousins is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I've been saying that since day one. But he's somebody who could span the tide of Michael Penix Jr., who's had to deal with injuries in the past in college, has to go down for a couple of games. Kirk Cousins can easily come in, one, because he's been in the system for at least a year. They're not having to go and sign or trade for somebody to bring him in. So the Atlanta Falcons, unless there's a team that's a Super Bowl contender that says, hey, we're going to break the bank and give you what we're going to give for Kirk Cousins. Plus, again, I don't see that happening because I don't think Kirk Cousins is that type of quarterback to win a Super Bowl, but he is a viable backup. And in the NFL, where this is the most important position on the field, you need a backup that can get the job done if your starter can't due to injury. All right, when we come back from the break, it's going to be answering your questions via Chain Gang Chatter, and we're going to go on college football because it's that time. Back when we move the chains, right after this. Welcome back to Move the Chains. Before I get into the Chain Gang Chatter regarding college football in week one, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for hosting Move the Chains. Secondly, I want to thank you, the fans, whether you're watching on TikTok or YouTube or on Facebook or supporting this show via the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54. Truly appreciate it. And to the best production crew in the business, I don't think you really understand how hard it is to make sure this show runs at the level in which it does. Truly grateful for the men and women that make sure their time is spent helping this show grow. Best production crew in the business. And also, you see the QR code at the bottom of the screen. You've seen it the entire show, and it'll be there. If you're hurting physically, mentally, spiritually, or financially, make sure you click on that QR code, check out the information, and contact Robert, whose contact number will be on here at the end of the show. Having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for the Chain Gang Chatter. All right, so I love the fact that we talk NFL and college football on this show. That's the way I wanted it to be, and that's how it is. So I've got some questions that I want to answer regarding college football in 2025. So let's go ahead and hit it, man. What's my first question? Would I take Ohio State or the field in 2025? I think the answer is easy here, and it's the field. And to me, it's not because Ohio State's not a contender. Remember, me taking the field doesn't mean Ohio State's not a contender. It just means that I'm willing to look at teams like Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Georgia, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami possibly. Like, I'm looking to look at those teams and say they could be a national championship contender as well, could win the whole thing. But here's what it is about Ohio State. They were in a perfect storm type situation last year. And I say that because most teams that have veteran leadership and top tier talent are typically teams who have people in the program for 3 or 4 years because they're not a championship contender day in and day out, year in and year out. Like your Indianas of the world or your SMUs of the world, or Illinois even had a good season last year, weren't in the college football playoff, but they had a type of season that could build something. Ohio State is typically a team that has to deal with turnover because they have so much great NFL talent, which they still have to deal with. But last year they had that defensive veteran leadership because you had guys like Sawyer who wanted to come back and prove something, in addition to what they did through the transfer portal and Junkins and Caleb Downs. So, one, that's an issue. Two, same way I couldn't overlook the change in offensive defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, can't necessarily overlook it in Ohio State. Now, Brian Hartline has been on the staff for a while. He's a new offensive coordinator. And now you've got Matt Patricia, who's been a coach and a head coach in the NFL and been with the Patriots. So I'm not saying they're lacking competency. They just may be lacking the cohesion, right? That matters. So when I look at the law of averages, when I look at the teams in college football that can be contenders, along with the changes that Ohio State's had to deal with because they were the best, just like in Alabama or Georgia or Clemson, when you win, you have to deal with people coming after you, not just from a recruiting standpoint or on the field, but also with your assistants. I think I'm taking the field over the defending national champions. Doesn't mean Ohio State's not a national championship contender, but I take the field over them in 2025. All right, what's my next question? What college football game is undervalued in week one? I think it's Syracuse and Tennessee. I think Syracuse will have offensive and defensive fronts that mirror the SEC because of who their head coach is in Fran Brown and where he was before he came to Syracuse, and that's Georgia. I'm just telling you. And when I look at Tennessee, I look at a team that may be in another era, in the era of Josh Heupel. Because the same way I said they had that leadership on the defensive side of football for Ohio State, Tennessee had that offensively. And you've got a lot of different names and a lot of different personnel on the offensive side of football. Don't think the philosophy will change, but the personnel has. So they're going to have to grow. And defensively, they were young in the secondary last year, and that may be their biggest strength this year defensively. Now, they've recruited well. Josh Heupel understands what he's doing. I think he's a good coach. I'm saying this is undervalued because people may not believe in Syracuse as much, and they may think Tennessee has missed their window. But I think these are two teams that can easily have something to say about who wins the ACC and the SEC, respectively, in 2025. All right, what's my last question? What do you think about a 9-game conference schedule in the SEC? Well, my initial thought was, well, the SEC is not going to get bullied into doing what everybody wants them to do, because you remember the talk. Well, everybody else plays 9 conference games in Power 4. The SEC plays 8. Everybody disregarding the SEC typically plays a non-conference Power 4 game, first game of the season, which is that quote-unquote 9th conference game. But now they're adding a conference game to that. And the way I look at it, honestly, is with Greg Sankey and all these teams and all these coaches, they're just giving the SEC another opportunity to get more teams into the playoff. Because if we consistently see this conference with the most ranked teams and the most opportunities to beat a ranked team, why do you think this hurts them at all? You give them an extra opportunity to earn a data point, whatever that's for the College Football Playoff Committee. So you just allowed the strongest conference in America. I understand the Big Ten's won the national championship the past 2 years, and I think they're a very good conference. But again, I think you allow the strongest conference in America, being the SEC, to gain another opportunity to prove that, because now they're playing 9 conference games in addition to the game they're still going to play outside of the conference against the Power 4. That's what everybody wanted. That's what you got. Don't complain when it doesn't work out in your favor. Hey, when we come back from the break, there's a team in the NFC North that finished last in its division that everybody says has to make the playoffs in 2025, and I just don't think it's true. As a matter of fact, it's nonsense. Back with my favorite segment of the show right after this. Welcome back to the show, and it's time for my favorite segment of the show here on Move the Chains. It's time for my nonsense narrative. So I like ribs a lot. My wife and my kids like ribs a lot. And the one thing we do with our ribs is we throw them in the slow cooker because the meat is so tender and so juicy and so amazing. Let the Bears and Caleb Williams hit the slow cooker, man. I mean, this is a team that it's not like you went from a quarterback who is going into the Hall of Fame like the Packers did, right? Although you went from a head coach who has taken his team to the playoffs 8 straight years or something. We're acting as if the Chicago Bears have been a premier team and organization in the NFL. The reason they got the number 1 pick, right, and the reason that they have a brand new coach is because they weren't great. Now, they got the number 1 pick via trade from Carolina, but they were still going to be a top 10 pick because they weren't good. You get what I'm saying? So allow Caleb Williams and this team time to grow and gel. Let them draft under the Ben Johnson era with Ryan Poles at GM because he's trying to build an organization that can sustain winning. And I think you've got your quarterback of the franchise. And I know for everybody and for all the people that I've heard say there's no way he's going to be better than Jane Daniels, first of all, I'm a huge Jane Daniels fan. Me. You know I am. I've said it on the show millions of times. I also said that Jane Daniels, to me, was a better quarterback than Caleb Williams. That doesn't change the fact that I think Caleb Williams will be a very good star in the NFL. But you got to let him grow. You got to let him cook. And I think if you're looking at this and saying the Chicago Bears are unsuccessful or the season is a failure because they don't make the playoffs in 2025, well, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. You're kind of now allowing them to grow. Ben Johnson's never been a head coach before, and I know we want to think of him as his offensive genius, which I really think he's a creative guy and has done a great job as offensive coordinator. We also thought the same thing about Cliff Kingsbury and found out that Cliff Kingsbury wasn't a good head coach. I'm not saying that's Ben Johnson. I'm just giving you a parallel. I'm giving you an example of somebody who can be a great offensive mind and not yet be a great head coach. You have to let him grow into that as well. All I'm saying is the Chicago Bears, like the New York Giants, might be the 4th best team in the division in 2025, but it doesn't mean they'll be a bad team because somebody has to finish last. And the Bears have the opportunity to be very good in the future. Just give them the opportunity to build a future. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the final segment of the show. There's a team in the SEC that I think everything is in line for, and it's just perfect for them. And I'll tell you who when we get back. Back with the final segment of Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. It's now time for the final segment of the show. It's time for the final drive. Man, I truly believe that everything for Texas is just perfect and it benefits them. So let me not say perfect. Let me say everything benefits Texas. I think being in the SEC benefits Texas. I think being Texas benefits Texas from a recruiting standpoint and from NIL money because they're not missing any meals when it comes to all that oil money in Texas. I think losing in the college football playoff semifinal last year benefits Texas. I think having a backup quarterback who is now the starter that you didn't have to go via transfer who doesn't know the system benefits Texas. I think Texas is in line to benefit from what they've been building under Steve Sarkisian the first 4 or 5 seasons, and I think it'll be on display in 2025. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch Move the Chains right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, man. It's at Move_the_Chains. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that bell for notifications so you can make sure you are aware of every time we post a video because we're here for it. Hey, another banger for the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And don't forget, if you're hurting spiritually, physically, mentally, or financially, scan that QR code at the bottom, look at the information, and call Robert and tell him you're ready to move the chains. Hey, as always, right here, until next time, God bless.